In a small town hidden among the tribes and echoes of history, there's a cafe that serves strong coffee and sharper conversations. It's where our story begins, on a seemingly ordinary afternoon. But for Walter Davis, a 78-year-old black veteran, it would turn into a day he would never forget. As he sipped his coffee, gray hair glistening under the weak cafe lights, he felt a familiar warmth, the kind that comes from memories of service, honor, and camaraderie, until everything changed in an instant. Suddenly, Mason and his crew stormed in, a pack of young men too loud and too confident, wearing arrogance like a badge. You could feel the tension shift as they approached Walter, sneering and spitting out racial slurs, their energy thick with malice. For a moment, time stood still, Walter's tranquil demeanor standing in stark contrast to their aggression. Even with their taunts slicing through the air, he remained calm, almost tranquil in that chaotic cafe, creating a sharp juxtaposition between his poise and their brutality. Unfortunately, this peaceful moment was tainted by the silence of onlookers who chose to look away, lost in their mugs of steaming coffee. But a little background might help you understand who Walter really is. This wasn't just an old man sitting alone. He was a leader, a decorated veteran from an elite military squadron, a man who has faced real battles both abroad and in his own backyard. The medallion hanging from his neck, not just a piece of metal, was a symbol of his valor, a reminder of his commitment to fight for something greater. Today, though, it wasn't just a memory of glory. It was a reminder of the cruelty he thought he had left behind, and yet here it was, staring him in the face like a familiar ghost. After the attack, Walter stepped out of the cafe, his heart pounding. He left behind a note not for the tormentors, but for his old squad, a clandestine call to action. The kind of call you make when you know it's time to remind people that victims can also be warriors. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old phone, its buttons smudged, but still working perfectly. He pressed the first number, Marcus, a fellow soldier, his unwavering confidant. No theatrics, just a single powerful message. Need you here. In a mere 12 hours, the squad mobilized. Memories of laughter and shared danger filled the spaces between his thoughts, like old film reels. These men were not just soldiers, they were brothers. Walter thought about Mason and his crew, about the ignorance they held close to their hearts, never understanding that beneath his seemingly fragile exterior lay decades of experience and a resolve forged in fire. "Sarah, you won't believe what happened today," Walter said to his niece later that evening. They talked about the town he once loved and the historical injustices still lurking beneath the surface. 50 years before a massacre happened on the bridge just outside town, a silent scream of shame that nobody wanted to acknowledge. "This town needs a reckoning," he confessed to Sarah, fear and anger echoing through the words. "What we faced, it can't happen again." As the days passed, tensions rose. Mason was not just some petty bully. He was brimming with cruelty, fueling his crew's bravado. The threat of confrontation hung in the air, thick, electric, like the calm before a storm. Walter knew he needed to prepare for what came next. He retrieved his old military revolver, the cold metal feeling, both foreign and all too familiar, in his hand. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about fighting against an entire system that had for too long turned a blind eye. Walter reflected on the Black Hawk Squadron, the legacy they shared, and the bond that went deeper than blood. Each mission they had completed and the sacrifices made were like sacred vows. He could feel their spirits urging him forward. The duty was not just to uphold his own honor, but to pass their story to the next generation and demand outrage against sorrowful injustices. When he re-entered the cafe days later, he appeared vulnerable at first, an old soldier standing alone against the shadows of intimidation. Mason and his crew took notice, smirking, thinking they still had the upper hand. But in that very moment, a strange wave of power washed over Walter as he pulled out a stack of documents. Photographs that narrated the horrors of the bridge massacre, long-buried truths coming back to life. The cafe felt electric. Everyone held their breath as he laid it all bare, unveiling their town's past. The moment escalated into chaos, a convergence of voices and fists, old traumas colliding with the present. Walter stood tall, leveraging every ounce of strategic training he'd gained during long nights in the heat of battle. Just like that, he neutralized the threat with precision, showing Mason that not all battles are won with fists. Some require exposing the truth. The community watched an awakening sweeping over them, realizing they could no longer stay silent. Afterward, as the sun set on that day, Riverside began to confront its buried demons. With arrests made and wrongs being addressed, it felt like the town was taking its first steps towards truly healing. Walter found himself at the cemetery accompanied by his squad, reflective, grateful for the first time in a long while that feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. They had not just fought for themselves, they had fought for justice in a place desperately needing it. "I'm too old for this," Sarah Walter chuckled, reminiscing about the fight as they left the cemetery. "But I wouldn't change a thing." They talked about how the next generation must carry the torch to speak truth over silence. A memorial was later erected honoring past activists and celebrating resilience against oppression. In closing, Walter's story reminds us all of the importance of confronting our past, of digging up truths of resilience in the presence of overwhelming adversity. It asks each of us to reflect on our communities. What hidden stories, battles, or injustices remain silent? Don't let them stay that way. Join the conversation. What have you seen or experienced that demands to be uncovered? Comment below. We're listening. And if you found this story as inspiring as we did, don't forget to subscribe for more narratives that need to be shared. Together, let's keep the fight for justice alive.